Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Derek TV, a place where I try to give it to you as real and direct as possible. I've been doing a lot of research on this ongoing crisis, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about what I know, just go on the record. Remember, I was, I don't want to say one of the first people, but I definitely thought that this could be something major early in January and or maybe middle of January, and it turned out to be just that. And in fact, it happened much faster than I expected. I expected it to take about 6 months, and it took really about 2 months. So I didn't take into effect how many people actually travel from the region of not that I'm blaming this on China, but from the region of China to the States, and in that particular region of China, I certainly didn't think that we had that many travelers. But if this had happened 10 years ago, that would have been the case. But now we have such a global economy, and we have basically, what do they call them? Jet setters and international um, travelers, international people that move and live from one country to the other pretty often. And that essentially has created this, what is called the pandemic. It's a very, very strange time. It is in my lifetime. There is not ever a moment that I can recall that felt like this. There are some things sometimes that are similar in terms of feeling a new experience and almost like recognizing your mortality and recognizing the possibility of things going bad, either with you or close to you. So, not to be so morbid and drab in my initial statements, but that's essentially what I think I'm feeling, and I think a lot of people are feeling. I think that it's a reality for everybody now, and as Florida said, in good times, damn, damn, damn. I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was a time in good times when James died in Florida, normally who's even keel most of the time, just and she was the one sort of holding it together the whole time, and something happened at the kitchen in the kitchen, and she threw down a punch bowl and basically broke down with those words. And that's how we kind of feel right now. It's very strange, strange situation. But I'll stop saying that it's strange, but it is strange. It's almost like you wake up in the morning and you feel like, wait a minute, was this a dream? There are a few times in life when that happens, where you wake up and things are so odd, so different from the day before, the week before, the month before, the year before, that you wake up and you think, okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and the situation's going to be different. I go to bed thinking that, like, the whole day today was a dream, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and this will be different. Like, I wake up tomorrow and things will be normal. But that hasn't happened, and it is odd waking up on a daily basis and thinking you're in a dream and recognizing that it's not a dream, it's reality, and reality is now as strange as a dream. So so far, I probably won't talk about very many things that don't know about, but I will talk about um, things that I think that a lot of people have either overlooked or aren't taking very seriously. I called a bunch of friends and family yesterday, as I have been calling over the past weeks. I can tell you my initial phone calls in January were not received with any interest whatsoever. And in fact, some of the very things that I said to people in January, are now being repeated back to me as if I never told them, and as if they had never heard it before, or as if they had come up with these ideas themselves. So um, we have a coronavirus that is among us, and it is a highly contagious virus. It is what they're referring to as a novel virus. And the reason why they're referring to it as a novel virus is before coronaviruses are something that have been around um, with us for probably the beginning of mankind. And they have been sort of discovered or known to exist for a long time obviously in the medical industry. But the previous coronaviruses that we knew about, there were only six. And the reason why this one is referred to as a novel coronavirus is because it's new, such as novel, and it is now the seventh known coronavirus, and therefore new and novel. So if you didn't know that, now you know. The reason why corona is referred to as corona, the actual virus itself has spikes on the edges. It's like a weapon almost. And those spikes, and I'm not a doctor, and this is obviously uh, low level comprehension. I'll just say that. But those spikes actually allow for it to puncture the cells and get inside the cells and infect it. And so therefore those spikes are referred to as corona, therefore coronavirus. This is coronaviruses are respiratory viruses. What they do is they enter into your lungs and they infect your lungs. Other widespread or I don't remember. I think the SARS disease was or virus was a pandemic as well. I could be wrong, but the other sort of widely known viruses or coronaviruses that affect the body in a similar way are what is called the SARS, if you remember SARS, which is an acronym for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, and the other one was the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. So those were the two larger issues or larger coronavirus issues that we had in the past. And as I said before, this one known as the uh, COVID-19 is now the seventh known coronavirus, and it was, they say, spread to us by some sort of animal, possibly a bat. Possibly, I can't remember the name of the other animal, but it's a scaly animal that looks sort of like a beaver, but it has scales all over it. And apparently in Asia, in the what they call or refer to as wet markets, they eat these animals. They essentially eat everything. And wet markets are basically a place where you can go in China to purchase food, animals to eat, and those animals are almost unlimited. They eat just about everything. And in some cases, they eat things not because they have to, but because they feel like those things provide certain sort of medicinal properties or things that would help with ailments and or other uh, we'll just say attributes if eaten. So again, this disease or virus goes for the lungs. Most of the time when you contract this particular coronavirus, the um, apparently the symptoms are very mild, and sorry, I have to text my daughter back. She's texting me. No, just to okay. So apparently most of the time when you get this virus, you actually have mild symptoms. You have a mild fever and a slight cough, and you're it takes over your body. You are good to go in a few days. That's most of the time. Sometimes people with other ailments, such as nobody's really mentioning this too much, but if you have asthma, apparently it can affect you. If you have difficulty with some sort of lung issues, it can affect you. If you're a smoker, it can affect you. Um, it so I guess what I've read is it happens is you get some like fibrosis in your lungs. So fibrous, I don't want to say tissue, but fibrous matter forms in your lungs and prevents you from breathing well. And then apparently, the worse it gets, the worse that gets. So most people, as I said, don't have bad symptoms. So that's one reason to feel a little less worried about it. Um, but who wants to be sick and who wants to take a chance? So I'm taking this as seriously as I possibly can, and I think everybody else should too. I have a crazy story to share with you about really how this has gotten to the place that it's gotten to in the states, and I'll share with you. Ooh, if I can remember where. I'll just give you the doctor's name, and you can find it probably with keywords from that. But apparently, you can have symptoms for up to 24. No symptoms. No symptoms for up to 24 days, and still be contagious, still infect people for over 3 weeks. Now that is crazy. So just keep that in mind. Trying to stay hydrated. Apparently, it helps. 20% of the people that are infected by the disease will have to be hospitalized. Most people will not, as I stated earlier, but 20% of the people that contract the disease will have to be hospitalized. And apparently, if that happens at the rate that they're expecting the spread to get, by the way, it's supposed to get much worse, and I will talk about that in a second. But if 20% of the people who do get the virus um, um, have to be hospitalized, then that will put us at about capacity, if not over capacity, in terms of the amount of hospital beds and doctors and medical capacity that we have in this country. Now, we happen to be one of the luckier countries. Apparently, if other countries have outbreaks um, like we have the possibility of having here, they're going to be in tough shape and have to do some of the things that China did, such as build what they referred to as hospitals, but in reality, and I don't know this for sure, so I don't want somebody yelling at me or telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about in the comments or on social media. But some of those places that they built, I have heard, were not actually hospitals, but were more quarantine facilities, and pretty bad at that. So just be aware of that. And maybe they reacted a little bit hastily with that behavior, but they were trying to get a hold of it. I said I was going to talk to you about something else, and I should have written it down. So 20% of the population, no symptoms, will need. Uh, okay. So as you know, NBA has suspended its season. So has the MLS. Colleges have basically instructed students to leave. Harvard, I think, has students leaving by Sunday. Many colleges in California have done something similar. They're having kids stay home and actually be homeschooled. And just I'm not telling you anything that you know, but this don't know, but this is for my own personal record too. So when I look back at this in 100 years, I will be able to see what was happening. So I'm just getting this all on record. So that is, if other things come to me, there was a couple of things that I missed in that I didn't write down, but that's the gist of kind of the particulars on that. There is a so before I tell you the crazy story, I just want to say that today was the end of the longest bull market in U.S. history. I didn't really look at the length of time, but I think it's somewhere around almost 10 years, 9 years, 8 years, something crazy like that. But it was the today was the end of that, which is sad. So as I um, when I started this podcast, it was around 28, 29,000. The Dow Jones was at 28, 29,000. And now we're all the way down. Today we closed at I think we closed at 21,200, which is insane. I mean, absolutely crazy. I can't even it again, surreal, strange. Today we dropped 10%. It's the largest drop since 1987. Like the fact that this is happening in my lifetime, like I remember 1987. I don't necessarily remember the market crash because I was young and who cared? And I'm sure there are plenty of people that were teenagers back now that don't even care about what's happening today. But knowing all that I know about the market and business and where we have been thus far in terms of number of like where the Dow Jones has what it has gotten to and the heights that it's reached and the amount of money that companies have been able to amass and um, the market cap of these companies up to this point is just astronomical, insane, bizarre. The fact that we have gotten to the place that we are today is nuts, and it's sad. In a way, it's sad because we shouldn't have to. It shouldn't have to be this way, but it is, and it's not going to stop. And I will tell you why it's not going to stop. So, well, okay. Article came out yesterday. There's a doctor named Dr. Chu, Dr. CHU, okay, out of Seattle. So this article was written in the New York Times. I got to read it yesterday. So this is all information that I have. This is what, like I said, very mildly comprehended information. So apologies if I get something incorrect. I don't usually get numbers too far off, but there may be other things that are inaccurate that I say to you today. But I will say this: what you should do is go read this article, and the article I think is I have to look at the keywords, um, but it was written in the New York Times, and the doctor's name is Dr. Chu. And if you put New York Times, Dr. Chu, Seattle, you can read that article. Okay. Um, and she had experience. She had an experience with one of the first cases in the United States for the coronavirus. And this happened back in late January. So they're saying late January. So she has a patient. So, first of all, this patient that is known the patient, after all of this stuff was happening in China, and people were starting to talk about um, the possibility of the virus jumping from China to everywhere. Um, there was a gentleman who was sick in Seattle, and I just want to emphasize there was a guy in Seattle exemplifying symptoms that were symptoms similar to what you get when you get the coronavirus. Okay? I want to repeat that. He was exemplifying symptoms similar to what you get when you have this coronavirus. Okay? The gentleman also was known to have traveled to Wuhan, China. Now, I don't know if I'm saying it right. Wuhan. Wuhan, China. This guy was exemplifying symptoms of having the coronavirus, and he had traveled to Wuhan recently. Just gotten back. The doctors say, hey, we have a patient. He is definitely sick. He has a fever. He has a cough. We think he could possibly have this virus. They contact officials in Seattle. The officials in Seattle, health officials in Seattle, contact the federal government, the FDA, and the CDC. Now, don't quote me on this. You can go read the article yourself. It's all there in black and white. But they actually called the FDA and the CDC, and they said, hey, this guy traveled to Wuhan. He has a fever. He has a cough. He's exemplifying the symptoms that you would have if you have the coronavirus. And we would like to test him. This guy did not meet the criteria of the CDC and the FDA to be tested for the coronavirus. They did not want to waste any tests on this fellow. I don't know if that's the verbiage that they use. I don't know if that's actually how they felt. I don't know what the reason for them not testing this fellow was, but the fact that they chose not to, I think, is egregious and ridiculous, and I don't even understand why. Okay, so that is, think late January, sometime in January. Okay, so Dr. Helen Wu then decides, okay, we can't test him. We're not authorized to do testing. So she decides not to do testing. But what they decided to do was sort of monitor. Okay. So then another person comes in. This is where Helen Wu comes in. So another a teenager comes in and says, basically that they're sick and they're exemplifying symptoms. So then she says she wants to test this guy. I think this is a couple weeks later. So then she again contacts the Seattle health officials, the FDA, and the CDC, and they tell them that she is not authorized to test any people, and she is not to test this individual. So a couple weeks go by. She decides after what I think probably happened, and she hasn't said this in the article. I think they probably did some testing behind closed doors and realized that they needed to do testing. So anyway, they kept contacting the officials to do the testing. They kept saying no, so they tested anyway, and they had taken samples from people. I can't remember why. I think they were testing them for the flu, and they had tested up to 70 individuals that had been in contact with the fellow that had been in Wuhan and also the teenager. Now, again, I could be conflating the two, but just know that the two individuals were exemplifying symptoms. The CDC and the FDA said not to test them. And Dr. Helen Chu decided after a couple of weeks to do testing without authorization. And what happens when she does testing? She finds out that the person has tested positive for the coronavirus. So this is 2 weeks later. Okay. So that means that the person not only has been sick for God knows how long before they were exemplifying symptoms, now they're exemplifying symptoms, and she decides to go out on a limb and test them herself, or test this teenager herself. They find out the teenager has the coronavirus. They immediately called the school that the teenager is going to. The teenager literally had walked into the door, so they say, of the school, and they immediately told the teenager to leave the school. The school shut down, and they tested a bunch of people apparently, and nobody had it. Don't know if that's true or not. But here's the thing. So then she goes back to the FDA, CDC, and she says, I'm going to say at this point the FDA is out of it. I don't know. Maybe she talked to both of them. But she says, can we do testing? We've now found that this teenager is positive, has tested positive. We need to test other people because they have been walking around, him including the other guy, have been walking around the Puget Sound area for weeks, could have been basically spreading the virus to other people. The CDC, the FDA says you are not to do any testing. You're not authorized. So back and forth with them, pleading with them to do testing. Finally, they say you can't do testing, but we're going to send you some tests that you can use. Now, this is the CDC. The CDC says we're going to send you tests. Now, the CDC, if you've watched movies, you read anything about the CDC, these guys are supposed to be legit, right? And I always thought they were like just the top of the top, the guys who really care about the public and want to do things the right way. The CDC sends tests. The tests that they get are showing up invalid results. So basically, they send them faulty tests. The CDC sends tests that are faulty. Who else is going to do it? So anyway, they modify some tests, not the CDC, but the doctors, Dr. Helen Chu, and I guess her partners, and they do testing, and they find, after they do some gene sequencing, and then after a while they discover that more people have it, and essentially Dr. Helen Chu realizes that these people have been walking around for, guess how long? How long do you think this went on for? Guess how long before there was any authorized testing for people that were exemplifying symptoms of the coronavirus in the Seattle area. Guess how long? 6 weeks. Not days, not hours. 6 weeks. They knew that people had symptoms or exemplifying symptoms similar to those that you get when you have the coronavirus, and they let people walk around essentially infecting people for 6 weeks. So before that, there were no deaths. Before that, nobody had died from this disease. And within a few short days, 2 people died in that area. And as far as I know, I haven't looked at the numbers, 20 or 22 people have died in the area. And they believe those people were infected by the very people that I started the story with. So the reason why everything is in crisis right now, such as what's happening in New York and other parts of the country, is because this has been going on weeks since probably the beginning of the year, probably since um, uh, this took place in this broke out in China. So I'm not saying that those people wouldn't have died. I don't know. I am saying that 6 weeks is a long time to have your hands tied from trying to help people. And my theory about obviously why this well my theory about why this happened is there are, first of all, this is controversial because I have people in my family that are in this industry, so I will handle this as softly as I possibly can. The medical industry, no, I won't even. It's not even the medical industry's fault. The problem is that too few people in this country and possibly even the world have control over too much. And I'm not advocating for any of those things to be taken away from those people. Those people work for their things, and that's not what I'm saying. But the reason why Dr. Helen Chu was not able to move forward is because there are people in positions in clinics, laboratories, heads of departments in big organizations in the government that are very, very comfortable. You know what I mean by comfortable? Do you understand what I mean by comfortable? I mean luxuriously comfortable. I mean big salaries. I mean big houses. I love those things. Don't get me wrong. I think everybody should have a big salary. I think everybody should have a big house, and I have nothing against those things. In fact, I'm all for them. I think you should live in as much luxury as you possibly can. So please don't get me wrong when I point out the fact that people make big salaries and live in luxury. I think that that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. This is America. You should be able to do that. But what you should not be able to do is be worried about losing those things because you don't want to make a mistake, or you don't want to get sued, or you don't want to get in trouble and get demoted, or lose your bonus, or lose your customers, or whatever. The person's whatever thoughts were going through their heads um, when they decided not to test people for 6 weeks and let people that were infecting other people infect people for 6 weeks. It is not wanting to lose that luxury, that big position, that large salary, while people are dying, while people are getting sick, while people are having difficulty. Now, do you realize that if those people had been tested in early January, mid January, even late January, I don't know exactly when this happened, when the first guy from Wuhan, China, who exemplified symptoms of the coronavirus, I don't know exactly when he came in and said, "Hey guys, I have a fever and I don't feel good and I just came back from China." Don't know the exact date. I'll figure that out. In fact, I'll write that down. But imagine the guy gets tested. Hey, this guy has the virus. We need to take some actions right now. It's very likely that very few people would have it. So, this is where, as I said in the beginning, I am a conspiracy theorist. I look at conspiracies. If you go back in time, you go back and read history, the things that you would consider conspiracies, some of those things are true. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, which I am, and I'm not blaming this on anybody, but it seems very strange, that when government officials and the CDC were told that people specifically from a region that this virus originated from were exemplifying symptoms, plus other people were exemplifying symptoms in the same area, they were told not to test those people. I think it's weird. And to just further support the conspiracy theorist, what if they didn't want it to be stopped? Something to think about. So, again, the article written in the New York Times. Listen, this article's out there. So, for all the people who say that news is suppressed, and I think it's suppressed as well, this is out there. It doesn't point to anything specific, it just shows you the negligence, and you have to connect the dots and decide if there was negligence or not, and if there could have been something done about it. Most experts say that there's nothing we can do about it, that quarantining people is not going to help, and this is something that's very difficult to stop because it is spread from human to human, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats, because they haven't even started testing yet in reality. And that's the scary part. I will say that again. They haven't even, I mean, for the sake of talking about testing, they haven't even started testing yet. I don't know what the current capacity for testing is now. I don't think it's that much. I know but I'll tell you who's actually testing at a really large rate, and that's South Korea. And if we could test at this rate, we'd probably be able to get a hold of on this thing. South Korea is testing 22,000 people a day. Now, this is supposed to be the best country, right? Well, that means we should be best at everything. And so if there's a country testing people at 22,000 people a day, now again, everybody has their propaganda, their propaganda outlets. So that could be propaganda. I should check before I make that statement. But that's what they say, 22,000 people a day. Let me put in number of coronavirus tests in U.S. per day. Say day. DAY. BBC News, U.S. is failing on testing, says Fauci. Okay. Dangerous delays in U.S. testing. 36 states affected. And survey local data from across the country. We can only verify that 4,384 people have been tested for the coronavirus nationwide. That's on Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Today's Thursday. So anyway, okay, so the United Kingdom, 3 people have died of the coronavirus, already tested more than 24,900 people. South Korea has tested more than 100,000 people and is testing roughly, no, this was on Monday, testing roughly 15,000 people a day. Okay, so government officials say don't wear masks. They don't help. They do say wash your hands. They do say don't touch your face. So wash your hands often upon entering rooms, buildings, interacting with other people. They say stay away from large crowds. So that means you can still be with other people. The disease is airborne. So and apparently it's extremely contagious. So you can catch it by, I suppose, having a close proximity conversation with someone. Obviously, if they cough or sneeze, um, it's I think it's up to 10 feet is how far those things can be sprayed out. So I would say wear a mask in public spaces. You have to get what's called an N95. No, I'm sorry, P95 a mask. I think it's P95, and wash your hands off and use disinfectant. Lysol, it's definitely will kill the virus. So stay safe, people. I will continue to give updates. I will try to do this every day. All right. Thanks for listening.